The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to Old Space Show. I'm Brandon, and riding shotgun with me, that's the passenger side of a car. People call it sometimes. They get into fights about it, but this guy doesn't. It's Tony Schaab.
Yeah, I didn't even have to call it this time. It's perfect. I love it.
I got all-time shotgun here.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so this series of Old Space Show will follow the exploits of a man. His name's Michael, and his car named Kit, 2 T's. The first season of Knight Rider. Today we are here to discuss episode number 8. No big thing.
No big thing. I know, right? It sounds so recent, so current. No big thing. So
no big thing.
Oh, all right. This episode, Devin Miles is arrested on a traffic violation in Lyndhurst Flats and ends up sharing a jail with Frank Reston, the very journalist that he was planning to meet. When Reston is killed by the corrupt police officers because he had too much evidence against them, Devin's life becomes forfeit as he was the last one to see Reston alive. Michael teams up with Frank's ex-wife, Carol, in his search for Devin.
All right, this one is directed by Bernard L. Kowalski, written by Judy Burns. And notice that we've been having some female writers through Knight Rider. It's pretty nifty.
Can handle that, yeah.
Considering how our main character is portrayed, I'm just like,
I mean, they probably had some rules to work within, obviously.
Right.
But
right. I'm just like, wow, it's kind of surprising. Like, you would think like, oh, this is probably a show dominantly written by men, but so far it's been like even, I think.
But and to be fair, even though the females are the female of the week genre, they've been fairly strong and relatively independent. Like, not all of them are like falling into Michael's lap.
They're no. But this one stars David Hasselhoff, Edward Mulhare, Patricia McPherson, William Daniels, Ted Markland, Mary Margaret Humes, Granger Hines, Jim Haney, and Logan Ramsey. Another crooked cops in a small town trying to shake up money.
Yeah, we're getting into a kind of a weird theme here. I know that the details shift a little bit, which is great, but yeah, it's definitely another one of those. I mean, it's political to an extent with the judge running the county under his thumb and things like that. So we get these, but it also keeps with the small like flag fighting for the small guy kind of thing. Like, this is just some random county somewhere, and we gotta, there's something wrong, you gotta go help them fix it.
But these cops, we start with Devin getting pulled over, and I think they picked the wrong guy to fuck with this time around.
I agree.
And I noticed, so this episode, I'm going to start with like talking about the score. It was very like electric guitar and horror synth version of the Knight Rider theme going on through this one. I was like, oh, okay, it
was kind of a strange vibe. I don't know if they were like, I didn't like, at first I was like, are they pushing like the creepy small town thing? But I didn't get that vibe from what we were seeing on the show. So yeah, it was a bold choice. But with that, hand in hand with that, was the return after a few episodes of not so much, was the return of a fairly rockin' soundtrack too.
Yeah.
Like the sound rights have come back. Let's put some well-known songs on.
It has Juice Newton's "Love's Been a Little Bit Hard on Me." was a top 10 single in 1982. If you listen to the Summer of 82 at 40 series, we even talked about the music video with Troy Brownfield. So I was like, Juice Newton, it got featured twice in here.
There you go.
People who might not know who's Juice Newton or the song, you might remember know one of her songs because it was featured in Deadpool, the opening credits for that, Angel of the Morning, and or is it Angel of the Morning? Is that what it's called? And then
yes.
it was in Promising Young Woman last year as well. But yeah, that's featured in here. I was just like, holy crap, here's a big hit. Also, it's something we talk about tradition. We open Michael and Kit talking about Michael's sexual exploits because they're running out of gas because it wasn't in Bonnie's fuel trip plans because Michael took a detour with some woman between last week and this week.
Oops.
Yeah. And
which is doubly interesting because then and then so that prompts them to stop at a gas station for like a side gag of
this script's not long enough scene.
Right. Yes. Another like, let's throw something in here to kind of kill some time and prove how indestructible Kit is again. But then when they stop, Kit's casually like, oh, because Michael's like, what kind of fuel do you need? And he's like, oh, any combustible liquid is fine. I'm like, then what's the big deal about you? Why did you wait till you got all the way to empty? Like,
Right.
Like we could stop anywhere. You're gonna stop at the Twin Pines Mall if you wanted to and grab some, like
right,
grab some Dox plutonium. Like you could stop anywhere. I don't understand.
Well, yeah. Well, this is a whole thing. Like this gas station guys like trying to like puncture Kit's tire and all, and they're like, oh, is he in with the cops? Nope, different town or something.
Yeah, like just more corrupt a-holes running around the country apparently. So.
That's a scene that's totally like, we don't have enough for this episode. Can you write something that I'll take up like 3 minutes, please?
Yes,
we need to add.
Yes, very reminiscent of the two would-be carjackers from back in the second episode for like very early on.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of that filler kind of vibe where it was like, I'm sure they thought it would be funny, but at the same time, like, yeah, this could have been trimmed for time if it was a concern, but it's the opposite. I feel like, they didn't have enough. And they're like, let's put some more gags in there and show how indestructible Kit is and things like that.
Yeah,
so.
It could appear in any episode of the show. It's not like tied to here. It could have opened up any episode. And Bonnie gives Michael the lowdown on Devin being arrested, and Michael's like, huh, what did they get him for? Assault with a deadly crumpet? Ha ha ha. Like, Michael,
so terrible.
Michael,
so terrible.
Come on.
I did notice in this episode that there were a few things that I'm sure at the time were like extremely like, and this is very on brand with how we've been talking about this show of like being very like ahead of its time with Kit and his technology and everything. But then some of it, not all of it, but some of it being very mundane to us today. But this episode has a few of those things where it's like for the time, like, oh my God, Michael's talking to someone on the phone on the other end on a wired phone, and he's talking. It's coming through the car, like like yawn ho hum. And then when they were looking at Kit's gauges, and he was like, my fuel is low, and it was like blinking low. Below it, you could see like all the technical stuff, and one of them said miles per gallon, and it had. I'm like, oh, he was keeping track of his miles per gallon. How forward thinking of them.
Oh gosh, yeah, high tech stuff. Also, we learn bets on college football too. That's one thing they're
not just any college football, kind of local, because the two that Michael chose to bet on was Notre Dame USC and Michigan State Indiana. I was like, he must be a Big Ten, must be a Midwestern guy. Good
right? Yeah. I wonder if Kit can pull up the scores and stats for him too. That high tech stuff that we take for granted now. So there's also in this, Devin is in jail with this reporter who gets brought in drunk, like Frank Reston or whatever, and like he's like some guy is investigating or something, and they're like, the cops talking, and they're like, too bad you couldn't arrest him on something better, like a sex offense. And somebody's like, well, Sarge, that could be arranged. And like instead they fucking kill him.
Right.
I'm just like Jesus.
Was this the lead up to that crime? Like, were you what? Yeah, and they were very like, they kind of beat around the bush about that part too. They're like, well, things got out of hand, and one thing led to another. I'm like, is from the sex offender thing?
Like what?
How did we get from point A to drastically point B here? I don't understand.
Like, do you think they forcibly got the guy drunk? Like, is that what we're supposed to assume there? Like a North by Northwest thing where they like?
You mean maybe like did they give him more? I don't know. It's like initially because then his ex-wife, then of course Michael meets his ex-wife, but then she was like, he was top of his game until he started drinking, and they had to like, they tried to connect the dots, but it felt a little out of place, because if he's like this investigative journalist who's like gunning for the Pulitzer and has like this big dirt on like everybody in this county, why would you jeopardize that by like day drinking and then driving? Like, like none of it quite adds up. Like, I get it, but not really. So,
Yeah,
you know, it is
I never get like the smart thing isn't to like kill the reporter that's onto you. Like that's always like
right.
it's the worst person to take out. Yeah, like you're gonna need to change your strategy here, but man, killing that guy, that's just like admission. Like if that guy
Well,
winds up
right.
dead, that's the worst thing that can happen to you.
Well, and then the whole genesis of him ending up dead, quote unquote, by accident, was that he was in the local county lockup, and then the deputies called the sheriff, and the
Hmm.
sheriff was like, "Bring him over to the main jail. I'm gonna talk to that guy." And then yeah, it was like he died in transit, or he died
Yeah.
when they were doing that. It was very vague at that point. It was just obviously a plot point to move things along, but
But we
it
have a
was left
murder.
very
Have we had
vague.
a murder? Like a straight up murder in Knight Rider? Like
Not that I'm aware of, not
I
that I can recall. Yeah.
I have a feeling he only is taken out of the picture so Michael can have some possibilities with his ex.
His
That's
ex-wife was definitely she was the girl of the week. So for better or for worse.
Carol. Who
Carol.
I have to say, she looks like the spitting image of like taking a computer program with two photos of meshing Haley Atwell and Jenna Ortega together. Like I was like, you look like both at the same time almost. It's weird.
She's very interesting. So Mary Margaret Humes, I guess,
Yeah.
reading some of the behind the scenes stuff. I guess she was in the running for Bonnie for like up until the very
Oh,
end, and they didn't cast her. So then they were like, well, we're definitely going to use you somewhere else. So that's why she ended up here, because she didn't land the Bonnie role. But this
okay.
still felt like kind of a throwaway. Like of all the girls that Michael has
Yeah,
like interacted with, she seems very tangential to the story.
yeah, she's very and there's not like a lot of romantic stuff. Like there's a at the end they always have like everybody hanging out or driving together
Right.
and it starts out with it has Devin and Michael driving. You can hear them talking in the car, and it goes to the car, and oh, it's just them. I figured Carol would be in the car with them. She's probably having to do funeral arrangements or something.
I
But
was gonna
yeah,
say, yeah, she's got other responsibilities, I guess. Who knows?
yeah. But Michael's excited about this because he wouldn't miss the chance to bail out our illustrious leader for all the pasta in Italy.
Yes.
Not a good week of zingers for Michael.
Absolutely not.
No.
Little weak here.
Yeah. So the judge runs this whole racket with the cops or whatever, and they put. I think the idea is they put Devin in a penitentiary, all for speeding. Like, I don't know.
Well, so yeah, so I mean, it started the speeding, but then he was,
Hmm.
and again, this is the very thin plot line that kind of connected. It was a very connect the dots thing, but because Frank
Hmm.
Reston shared a jail cell with Devin for about 5 minutes before they decided to rough him up and then accidentally kill him, Devin was the only person who could corroborate the story that the police had arrested Frank Weston, because the police are
Right.
going to be like, we can get rid of the arrest records, like we can make it look like he died at home, like an accident.
Right.
They're like, well, there's this other guy in the jail cell who saw that he was there, and then the judge is like, well, you got to get rid of him too, I guess. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was a very thin kind of connect the dots type of thing. But yeah, then he ended up at the state correctional facility, because that's where apparently you can make people disappear or put them when they're off the books or something. I don't know what the plan was. They were not
Gotcha.
they were not very forward thinking crooks here. So
No. And I want to point. I did note this. It is this episode really feels very different. Like and I counted up. Michael doesn't truly enter the plot of this episode until almost 18 minutes in. Like,
yeah, this is Devin drove much of this story, which again, I don't know if that's intentional. We talked about last episode
mhm.
about like how the side characters are starting to grow a little bit in terms of what they do and kind of branch out. So I don't know if this was an intentional choice to be like, hey, do you think we could have part of an episode that could be carried without Michael? Like if they were test driving, pardon the pun, for like something, later down the line of like a non-Michael episode entirely or
Mhm.
something, or a Devin only episode. I don't know, but yeah, they definitely felt like they were pushing to try to do this without Michael as much as possible this week.
Yeah, maybe a vacation or something. Yeah, a lot of his
Mm.
scenes are in the car. Um,
Yes.
yeah. But the cops also So the car stuff. They have a trucker on the payroll too that is like does their dirty work. Like
Yeah, not only willing to do their dirty work, but like literally willing to destroy his truck and like sacrifice his life, maybe. Because
yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were like, yeah, they're like, there's a black car coming. We need you to stop him. And he's
Mhm.
just so this truck driver just drives in the wrong lane into oncoming traffic and is ready to literally just smash Kit head on like
Right.
50 miles an hour. Like, what are you thinking? You think you're gonna walk away from that too, champ? Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
They do have a really cool like reverse car chase with that truck that goes
Yeah,
that's pretty nifty that I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool for the show. Like the action continues to impress me. Like
yeah, 100%.
it's a step above like your Dukes of Hazards and things like that. And it just because it's got that Dukes of Hazard wild and crazy stunt show aspect to a lot of it, but then there's a lot of really well shot and cut choreographed like finesse car sequences that
Yeah.
Dukes of Hazard doesn't have.
No, you're 100% right. Yeah, at the finale of this episode, we get a car literally landing on top of another car. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot. But one interesting thing while we're talking about well done finessed stunt stuff is there was this is a blink and you'll miss it. I had to go back and
Mhm.
rewatch it
Oh,
after I
okay.
read some side trivia. There's a spot about 18 minutes in where Kit is driving down the road. It's before Kit and Michael go over the bridge.
Okay.
And there is a spot where as they're driving you can see there's like an aerial shot like following them down the road, and
Okay.
as they're going down the road you can see parked right off the side of the road is another Kit, like one of the other stunt cars that they
Oh,
they must have stopped using or like stopped working, whatever. It's like
right.
right like Kit, so essentially Kit drives by Kit in this episode, but it's very quick and it's not like a big
It's
deal. So
foreshadowing for the next
yeah,
episode. That's what it
and
is.
yeah,
Some
I
deep.
mean, there's it's a very deep cut for what's coming next, right?
Yeah,
Of course, but
yeah. That's what they were. Yeah,
um,
that's what they were doing.
but there was a couple of those in this one. There's another one at the end where the
Mhm.
police officers are chasing Kit, and there's a big scene where like I just mentioned like one car jumps on top of another, but there's a
Yeah.
big like where there's a scene. I think it's where Devin. This is before that when Devin is driving the getaway car after they escape from the penitentiary. Devin and
Mhm.
two other um, uh,
Yeah.
ne'er do wells when they get a chance to escape from the penitentiary.
After a
Um,
food fight that they caused, they have a
yes,
food fight.
yes, of
Yeah.
course. It's the perfect distraction in a high security, maximum security prison.
With
You're
nobody
classically
outside. Nobody
absolutely,
left outside.
absolutely not. But yeah, so they're driving a truck that they had stolen the keys to, and Devin's like, "Oh, I can. We're gonna jump a fence because there's a conveniently angled pile of sandbags here that I can jump," which would never work, of course. But you can see after the truck jumps the fence and gets ready to land,
Mhm.
like there's no hiding it. Like there's a stunt driver. Not only is it a stunt driver who's not Devin, he's wearing a huge silver helmet for
Mhm.
safety, which I understand, but like they didn't even try to hide it. They're like, listen, this is a stunt driver. Like you're just gonna see it because we
Right.
thought the landing was cool. Like whatever, just deal with it. So a couple of gaffes in the episode, but no
No,
big
that
deal.
that
Whatever.
truck chase you're talking about was pretty cool. Well done. Like I was impressed with
Yeah.
that one. Like there was like shotguns, just really shot. It was quick, but a quicker sequence. But I was like, oh, that they actually had some angles and stuff. I remember I was impressed with a car showing up in the background behind the truck that like matched the shots they were doing, and I felt like something like that wouldn't be as well thought out in like an early '80s television show.
Yeah.
It might have been
Agreed.
too difficult to try to match up, but it worked. Um, Something that I did think was funny. So after the reverse car chase, there's a candle unlit dinner scene with Michael and Carol, where she's telling him all about the uh her ex-husband's research and all this stuff for his stories, and I just like it
Yeah.
was funny because it's like I don't know, just not working visually. Like they're shot a little too big, and like there's just these big candles, and they're not lit. They're like
Yeah.
having dinner,
It was yeah.
and it,
Super strange setting, and Michael and Carol are not sitting across the table. They're
mm-hmm.
sitting 90 degrees
Yeah,
from each other.
yeah,
They're almost like side by side, and all they're talking about is her ex-husband, and it was super weird vibe.
yeah.
Super
And it
weird.
always on my mind by Willie Nelson, another top 10
Yes,
hit from the
yes,
1980s,
that's
or
right.
1982. is playing during that. So it's like it was just like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to get? Like, are you conveying that he cares about her not romantically, but is in a oddly you have the romantic props there, but you're not using like it was really
Right.
and the music choice, like I
Yeah. Who's always on whose mind? Is it the
yeah,
ex-husband that's on the ex-wife's mind? Yeah, like I didn't understand any of it. Yeah.
yeah, it was all like I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. It was funny. So yeah, it ends up there's this big they get Michael ends up taking like the sheriff or something, and like we find out Kay has an ejector seat. Because there's like Devin has to go hide in like some orange grove type thing.
Yes. It's like a fugitive. It's very like
Yeah.
what's the movie of mice and men? It's very like fugitive on the lam. It
Yeah.
bordering dangerously close on like the very classic like Benny Hill like
Oh yeah,
where they're
yeah,
like
yes.
each other in the night type of
Yes.
thing. Dangerously close to that. Very
Yes.
close.
Oh, for sure. Oh, but yeah, so they go through and then they get the truck the truck driver again. And then
Hmm.
they have an RV guy on call and they're trying to
Right.
box them in on a bridge, which leads us to a nice jump stunt.
On the only bridge to the county line, which of course is a
Mm-hmm.
single lane bridge, right, where the RV, right, and yeah, so Kit's gonna jump it, but there's no explanation. I mean, obviously the stunt people used a ramp, but there's no ramp in
Mm-hmm.
sight. He wasn't like use the jump feature, Michael. It wasn't like it was just like okay, now he's in the air. So and he smashes through the RV because why the hell not? Like
Right.
literally, why not?
That's what you get.
That's right.
Where are you gonna sleep tonight? But yeah, so after this big chase scene and stuff, like it ends with Devin in his office, and the Paxton comes to confront him with a gun, and Devin slugs him, and he's
Oh
like,
yeah.
"My, that felt simply wonderful." So yeah, the end scene has Michael with him. And he's like, "Nothing like the slammer to make you appreciate wide open spaces." And at this moment, I thought how many times has one of the main characters from this show been behind bars in the show so far? Like Devin won, and I think Michael's been in jail 3 times, and this is episode 8, technically 7.
Yeah, I
That's a
think you're
lot.
right.
Oh, that's a
It's a lot of
recurring
jail
thing.
time.
A lot of
Yes.
jail time.
Constantly getting captured between that. Yeah, we can keep tally of jail time, and we can also keep tally of Michael getting caught
Hmm.
rifling through file cabinets because he's real shitty at that. This is at least the second time that he's been
Yes.
caught rifling through a
Yeah.
file cabinet. Like he's apparently when he's looking, I don't know if he's dyslexic, but when he's looking at text, he's all in. Like he
Yep.
loses his surroundings. Like someone can come up
No
right behind him
peripheral
with a gun
vision.
and he has
Just
no idea. That's right.
not a good file reader, that Michael. But the end leaves us with a bit of thought. He mentions that Carol said about Reston that by dying he accomplished everything he attempted to in life, and he's a shoo-in for the Pulitzer. To which Devin questions whether that price was worth it.
Hmm. I feel like
It
the
really
writers are
getting
like,
deep.
oh yeah, it's like first like
High five,
murder
everybody!
of the first murder of the show. Like we have to do something at the end,
Right,
like an in memoriam to like make his sacrifice be worth it or something. Just not some casual murder just
right.
because.
Yeah, but this episode, I actually liked this episode quite a bit.
Yeah,
It
it's
felt
fun.
like
Yeah.
different, had some really cool stunt work, consistent getting to action. It did have some lousy Michaelisms, but
Mm,
overall, it really kind of worked for me. I felt it was like a step up from the previous one, even though it had kind of similar settings and whatnot. But action show with cars and stuff. Getting permits for cities probably gets old and tiring, so going out to old country roads and stuff is probably the bread and butter of this
sure.
genre. But
Although I will say, I noticed this episode, like you said, I'm glad. We're like a third of the way into the season here, and they're
mhm,
starting to branch out and stuff. But
yeah,
the the Foley artists, the sound folks,
mhm,
have to kind of watch it a little bit because there's a lot of driving on like dirt roads and gravel
right,
and stuff. But I still hear the screeches like of
right,
of tires on asphalt. Like when Kit makes a hard turn on the gravel, you still hear. I'm like, oh, come on now. Like we have to pay more attention than this. Like with that, that's not the right sound. So
yeah, we
so
need that dusty peel out. Come on now.
that's right. Don't tell me like you didn't have those sounds on file from Dukes of Hazzard, please.
Right,
Come
yeah,
on.
exactly. Just no slide whistles on jumps or anything like that.
There you
please.
go.
Please. Well,
Leave the
okay.
banjos at home.
Okay, Tony, let's shift gears and look on toward the sunset before we hit the horizon. Where can people find you next year?
Yeah, well, you can see a year full of goodness over at sciencefiction.com, where I am the senior editor. We'll be tackling 2023 guns ablazing with all the fun movies and TV reviews and op-ed pieces and all the nerdy things we can talk about. If you want to talk to me directly about those fun things or anything else, you can find me on the social medias, Facebooks, Instagram, etc. at Tony Schaab.
All right. Hashtag Devin the British dude. Because there was a part where the cop, he was like, oh, there's just some British dude witnessed it. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD, written work on whysoblue.com. I believe when this drops the next day, my top 10 films of 2022 list should be dropping. Do you have a list coming out, Tony? For top
Yes,
films?
I'm gonna. We'll have a list over at Sci-Fi. We kind of do everything: films, TV. We try to do comics. I try to do everything. So there'll be some. This is a year where we were blessed with a lot of really great content, especially in the TV and movie realm. So not only will there be best of, but there are several like runners up because there was just so much good stuff to talk about this year. So yeah, definitely a big retrospective for sure.
I put together my I still got some films to watch before I make mine as recording this, and like I have mine, and I was like, all right, and I'm like, oh gosh, damn.
There was a lot.
There was
a lot. Yeah.
I know my like top 5 is pretty secure. There's like 5 films that are pretty secure, but then like the next 5 is going to be the tough cuts. My number 1 is certain. I don't think I'm going to watch anything in the next week or so that's going to top it, but we'll see.
I'm interested. Okay, because so I'm a member of the Indiana Film Journalists Association, and we had to vote on all of our like best of the year stuff because we always do that a few weeks before the end of the year. So we just announced those awards by the time you're hearing this a couple weeks ago. But so I was forced to sit down a few weeks ago and create my top lists and things like that. So yeah, it's out there for better or for worse. It's out there.
Awesome. We'll check it out. All right. And then Monday we're on repeats mode with the commentaries until I return later in January. But Old Space Show will be new, continuing every Wednesday here with Knight Rider with me and Tony. So from Old Space,
Brandon and Tony, not so lone crusaders in a dangerous world. The world of Old Space Show.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.